What are your primary assignments as a missionary?
My primary assignments as a missionary, I was told that I was to be a teacher in the high school. I taught 11 years in the high school, and I taught such subjects as Bible and English and physiology and hygiene and some other things. And I was assigned a Sunday school class, and to be sure, and I was supposed to be studying the language, and I was made the matron of the ladies' lodge, which meant I had to look after cooking for 6 to 8 ladies, using African young people as my cooks. And I had to teach them how to cook, and the American way, or something that we could eat. But I was supposed to mainly be teaching. And well, before I went to Africa, someone said, a former missionary said, "Now don't get a bicycle. It's not good for ladies to ride a bicycle." But I had to walk quite a little distance to the school and back to the kitchen to see that my cooks were taking care of the food for the new meal. So I got a bicycle. But for a while, a man there that used to sweep the mission with a branch would take my books in his wheelbarrow back and forth to school, because I couldn't carry them all. And but my main work was supposed to be teaching. But when you think of all the other things, and then one of the principals said, "Now I think you should have a garden plot too, that you should be able to grow something." I said, "Well, I think I have enough to do." He said, "Every missionary has to have some soil to putter around in." So I had to have a garden plot. Plus being matron of ladies' lodge, looked after their cleaning, their cooking, and besides teaching. So those were my duties.
What were your greatest delights as a missionary? Your greatest delights?
My greatest delight was when I could have one-on-one talks with students, go on gospel teams with them, and teach Bible in any class, whether it was geography or whatever. And that it was just a real delight to have that privilege of. And I've had some wonderful experiences of just having personal contact. One student came to me and he said, "Now, I'd like to have time with you once a week, just talk to you once a week." So I just took time out, whether it meant I had to hurry through meals or maybe not eat for a while, just to talk to him. And that person became a very good worker in the church. So my delights were in just helping people. And then I'd have the girls Saturday evening come around the fireplace. My house didn't have heat in it except the fireplace. And it would get down to 30 times. And we'd sit around the fire and they'd make their confessions to one another and they'd testify. And we'd pray together and had a wonderful time. Those were times that I liked very much.
Were you ever frightened as you served the Lord in Africa?
Now that hits a very difficult spot. The last years I was in Africa when the terrorist activity was very strong all around the missions. If you wanted to go anywhere to visit a church on Sunday, you had to call the police to see if it was safe in that area. We couldn't go to town except in envoy, with a convoy, have a group of cars go together. You didn't go by yourself. And terrorists were shooting people, like there was one farmer sitting in his house at supper time. They shot in the window and killed him. A good friend of ours, they took him and you might say they butchered him. And he was one that was treating them very well. But the terrorists, they have no rhyme or reason about their actions, as you know. And so then I was working with Luke Keefers at that time, And they went home for I'm not sure how long, and I was on the mission station all by myself at Ekopileni. And the only people that were there with me were some African young people who were taking care of the gardens. But every evening, as soon as it started getting a little dark, you pulled your drapes and weren't outside at all. But so I would tell these young people to come to my house so that we can have prayer together and read the Bible together and have a snack together too. And then they would go to their place and I would be left there alone at the house, and their cottages were way down a ways. And I never was so frightened, I don't think. You see, our windows were so low and the terrace would shoot in the windows. And I never was sure that I was safe even in bed. And they did, of course, attack the Wanese mission. And they came to the door when Mr. Nepper was there. And when they opened the door, they wanted to get the car keys so they could carry away the loot that they were getting from the mission store. And he grabbed hold of the gun, and that gave them a sign that he was going to be aggressive, and they started shooting. Now that night, his wife, Winnie, and the children had their evening story in the bedroom instead of in the living room, which was unusual. But if they had been there, they'd probably been shot. And so Carl Nepper stood between where the door opened. There was just a little area, and he stood back there, and he only got some shrapnel in his leg, which probably is still there. But they cut the telephone lines, and so you couldn't call out. And so it was a very terrifying time, because we didn't know from one time to another. And then one weekend they called us to go into town where it was safer. All the missionaries were to go into town, and the executive board, which was made up mostly of Africans, they decided that the missionaries should come home. They said that we don't want to see you shot. You wouldn't be shot for the gospel's sake. It was a political thing. And none of us wanted to leave. But when Luke Kiefer told me that we're leaving, I took a walk, and I think I cried for a mile. Because just to think of leaving those people I'd learned to love so well, and leaving so abruptly. But that's what we had to do then. We had to pack up and leave. And that was very terrifying. So when I got home here, I was in no condition to go back to teaching. And so I ended up again at Messiah Home in Harrisburg. And that time they hired me as a nurse's assistant without any training. But they needed help, and so I enjoyed that. And then after that I took a year, taught a year in a Christian day school out at Chambersburg, Shalom Christian Academy.